Hey yo guys, I'm here to give you my Survivor Series predictions, but before we get to that, I just have a question for you. As tonight is Survivor Series, which has always been always been considered one of the big four pay-per-views, even though in the current state of pay-per-views, it kind of loses its lackluster since there's just 14 pay-per-views a year from WWE. I'm just wondering, what are some of your favorite Survivor Series moments? Because I will be here right now just to tell you some of my favorite moments. Survivor Series, which started back in 1987, was basically to capitalize still on the momentum that the WWF was getting, because the WWF was red hot with this Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant feud. Plus, you're coming off a very successful WrestleMania 3, which did extremely well buy rates and in live attendance. So the WWF decided, well, we got to capitalize on this still. Let's have another pay-per-view. And this was also a way for them to compete with the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions' Starrcade pay-per-view, where Vince McMahon used his strategy of saying, well, went up to the pay-per-view company saying, it's either us or them. And basically, he got to bully his weight around and made the pay-per-view companies pick him, and eventually this led to the Starrcade of 1987 doing terrible business numbers, and just sped the process up where Jim Crockett would have to sell his promotion to Ted Turner, and in turn it would become WCW, and then they would move their Starrcade from Thanksgiving night to around after Christmas. But anyways, so this review here, the 1987 Survivor Series, was headlined around the fact that you had teams of 5 striving to survive, and the main event was Hulk Hogan's team, which was Hulk Hogan, Paul Orndorff, Don Morocco, Ken Patera, and Bam Bam Bigelow versus Andre the Giant's team of Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, the One Man Gang, Ravishing Rick Rude, and the Natural Butch Reed. In a pretty interesting match, other than the fact how Rude kind of just jobbed out to everyone. Overall, I mean, this was, a pretty good match, and it eventually set up to down the line of when Hogan and Andre would have another match in mid-1988, the main event, which is the highest rated television show that any wrestling show has ever got, with like a 15.2 rating. Basically, they just had a little tease, and you had Hogan just get counted out, and Andre got to be the sole survivor there. But the thing to me that stands out on this show is the Survivor Series Elimination Tag Team match, where you had 5 tag teams up against 5 tag teams. Strong match. I mean, you got to see some of the best tag teams in the world, because the WWF at this point had a serious tag team division, and they got to really showcase it here in a really strong match. You also had a really good women's match with the showcasing of some of the best women that they ever got, and the Jumping Bomb Angels. They got to go in there and take it up against the Glamour Girls. You also got to see Moolah in one of her final full-time matches before her comeback towards the Attitude Era. And also you got to see the still capitalizing on a pretty good feud as well in the undercard between the Macho Man Randy Savage and the Honky Tonk Man, and it's one of probably the most well-booked matches, Survivor Series matches, I think, because you had basically Savage's team go out there and basically eliminate Honky's team until Honky was the final guy out there. Honky was out there trying to fight for a while. Eventually he said, fuck this, I'm going to live to fight another day. Then basically the Survivor Series concept changed in around 1989, as instead of teams of 5 striving to survive, you had them just dropping it to 4. Really, the only thing noteworthy to me on the 1989 Survivor Series is the fact that you got to see that Bret Hart for sure was a guy down the line who could be a strong singles competitor, as he was on Hacksaw Jim Duggan's 4x4 team. He's the last guy left on the team, and he's just out there having these great little mini matches with, Macho Man Randy Savage, who he had great matches around the world with in the WWF. Dino Bravo, a guy who, seriously hurt Bret eventually down the line, but Dino could, for a guy his size, could really work, and him and Bret put on a good match. And the debuting Earthquake, or as they call him at this point, the Canadian Earthquake, really, it was just to show that Bret down the line is going to be a serious force. The big match really on this show was Hulk Hogan's team of Hulk Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Demolition versus $1 Million team, which was the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, Zeus, and the Powers of Pain, and actually not a good match at all. Really was just disappointing. Then we go over to the 1990 Survivor Series, and to me this is a memorable one for 2 occasions, where the the WWF decided, actually a concept that I really enjoyed and I kind of wish they would bring back, was you'd have your normal Survivor Series matches, but then the main Survivor Series match at the end. But really, what else you had on this show, which I still think that's a great concept, but it's going to go down for two moments. It's going to go down to the debut of The Undertaker as being Ted DiBiase's mystery opponent, and, you know, the guy, Mark Calaway, from day one got that character of The Undertaker, because the gimmick itself is stupid. He's an undead guy who's just taking your soul. I mean, it just sounds retarded, and if you had anyone else playing this gimmick, it probably would have, you know, maybe lasted 6 months to a year tops. But no, Undertaker, or Mark Calaway, got the gimmick, knows how to play it, he believed in it, and he just played it off so well, and they built him up so well. I believe he got disqualified or counted out in something retarded. And then at the end of that match, you had Bret Hart and Ted DiBiase. Great match as well. And one of the matches I know Bret dedicated to his brother Ross, who passed away that day. So it was a very interesting match. But the thing that I think most people are going to remember about the 1990 Survivor Series is the fucking gobbledygooker, where the WWF had promised this big thing where they didn't even know up until the show what they were going to do. So what they did was they got Hector Guerrero to dress up in like a weird, retarded, Kane enhanced dream chicken or turkey or whatever you want to call it, just to dance around with Mean Gene Okerlund in the ring. In one of, honestly, the most awful things you're ever going to see in the history of pro wrestling. Then you move over to the 1991 Survivor Series, where Undertaker has been, you know, getting viciously over. He's one of the best heels that the company has going. He's feuded with Warrior at this point. He had, you know, he put Warrior in, you know, the coffin. Now he gets his big shot at Hulk Hogan in the WWF Championship. Really, this was kind of I believe what happened here was that they gave Taker the belt just to set up an angle so that Hogan and Flair could, you know, build over to their match at WrestleMania 8, because they were more hyping Tuesday in Texas on this show more than anything. And you had Hogan get the win, and the rumor has it that Hogan went to the hospital because he said, "Oh, Taker dropped me on my head," just to prove a point that Undertaker couldn't work safe at all. Really not true at all, as Taker's one of the most safest guys in the ring you can ever be with, and, you know, no one fell for that, and eventually Taker drops the strap a couple days later at Tuesday in Texas. And the other thing is, this is Ric Flair's first review showing, as after he jumped from WCW, this is his first pay-per-view showing. He also came out with the WCW International Championship with a big gold belt, and, you know, it was in a pretty decent little match. I mean, they kind of cut the elimination matches a bit off around at this point, as, you know, it was Ric Flair and his team of Ted DiBiase, the Mountie and the Warlord, versus Bret Hart's team of Bret Hart, Roddy Piper, the Bulldog, and Virgil. Other than that, not much you can really say, and you can see the start of the breakup between the Rockers on this pay-per-view here, and eventually culminating in the barbershop. But anyways, in the 1992 Survivor Series gets a complete makeover. They cut all the elimination matches. There's only one, and it's basically the Money Incorporated and the Beverly Brothers versus the Natural Disasters and the Nasty Boys in okay elimination match. Personally, I think you could have probably got a better team than the Beverly Brothers, but anyways, that's just my little gripe there. This pay-per-view completely was different because they headlined it with, there were two matches that were supposed to headline this show. The match that was supposed to headline it was the Ultimate Maniacs, which was the Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior versus Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. But WWF decided, you know what, we have to change something. We're getting hit with all these steroid accusations, and they fired the Ultimate Warrior and the British Bulldog for drug trafficking at this point. And you see the change here as you have Mr. Perfect have to come back. They made him come back after taking, you know, basically a full year off from a back injury. It's his big return, and he comes in that match, and they built it up as a nice little angle with, you know, Perfect turning on Flair and Heenan and stuff like that. And it turned out great there, and the match was decent at best, and it's nice to see that, you know, they gave the Razor Ramon character a big chance. They knew this thing was going to take off, and Scott Hall absolutely played the Razor Ramon character to a T. But also, since they fired, you know, Bulldog and Warrior, these big steroided guys, the main event of this show was Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Two, you know, normal-looking wrestlers who got out there and get the chance, and it just completely changed what pay-per-view main events were going to be for the WWF up until, you know, around Lex Luger's push. But still, that just changed the whole game of how we're going to do main events and who's going to main event our company and what we're going to look for in a wrestler. That's, to me, what changed it there. In 1993, you had one of the most failed attempts at trying to get an important angle over Survivor Series elimination. You also had, I mean, it was supposed to be the All-Americans versus the Anti-Americans. It just didn't pan out and do, you know, good enough business for what the WWF had hoped for. But then again, this was in 1993, one of the worst years for the company. Also, this show was ridden with people missing. I mean, you had Mr. Perfect miss his match with, to be on his team, so they had to replace him with Savage. I believe he just felt like he didn't feel like getting in the ring at this point and wanted to take some time off due to steroid trials still happening. You also had Jerry Lawler miss his match, which in a way really did hurt how important the angle was going, because they had to switch it like a week in advance with Shawn Michaels due to Jerry Lawler going in for a rape trial, which he eventually didn't do. It was just some person trying to say that he raped her. I believe then you had in the main events, you had pair of the Quebecers and Tatanka missed their match. Really, it didn't happen there. And then this is probably one of the worst Survivor Series elimination matches in for the Four Doinks versus Bam Bam Bigelow's team. Just an atrocious match. The 94, you basically get a kind of change to it. You get to see the build-up of babyface turn for Diesel, as after he goes through Razor Ramon's team, he officially turns on Shawn, another super kick to the face, and you get to see that, you know, they're going to really push this guy, and he's going to eventually be the champion. And you see a very underrated match in Bob Backlund versus Bret Hart for the WWF Championship, and one of the best, you know, mini angles on a show put together. You know, still stemming from what happened in '93 between Bret and Owen, which, you know, was one of the best things that that company had in a rough time for the WWF. And, you know, Bob eventually gets the belt after Owen duping his parents in, and it just worked out great there. 95, they kind of put back the whole, what would you want to call it, elimination matches, whatever. I mean, they were trying to have the wild card match with having, you know, heels and baby faces on the same team. It was okay, didn't work out as well as, you know, I think it would have. But also I think that to me, the match that stemmed the opener, because you have a whole bunch of guys on the undercard who were just extremely underrated. You had like Chris Candido as Skip in this one. You had Marty Jannetty, the 1-2-3 kid. Sean Waltman. You had Radford. You had Tom Pritchard. You had a lot of Hakushi. Jinsei Suzaki. A lot of guys on the undercard at this point that didn't really get a chance to, you know, go anywhere, and they were just of that company and whatever. And then in 96, you had, you know, the debut of The Rock in his match, and, you know, he got a nice little pop, but it didn't last a while before the fans vehemently turned on him. But to me, this pay-per-view has two things. It's the return of Bret Hart after he took some time off after WrestleMania 12, and he has an extremely good match with Stone Cold Steve Austin here, and he wins basically how he beat Roddy Piper at WrestleMania 8, but this match pales in comparison what they do in March of 97 at WrestleMania 13 in a stunning match, probably match of the year of 97 if you ask me. And this pay-per-view gets remembered for the fact that you had Shawn's boyhood dream title run come to an end when Sid gets the victory. And, you know, the fans absolutely were happy that Shawn dropped the strap. They just absolutely turned on Shawn, and I can see, I mean, New York fans knew a lot about the business at that point, and as they still do to this day, and they just knew what Shawn was doing, and they weren't fans of it. And then moving on to 97, basically, it's the most important match in modern wrestling today. It's the Montreal Screwjob incident. I mean, both guys have written books about it. Anyone close to the incident has given their thoughts on it. It's been debated a million times. It was all about Bret Hart. WWF didn't want Bret Hart to go over to WCW and show up with his belt and whatever on WCW television. Well, basically, that could have never happened because, one, ever since Medusa or Alundra Blaze, whatever you want to call her, showed up on WCW television and dropped the Women's Championship in the garbage, WWF lawyers were all over the place on that, so WCW wouldn't want to go through that debacle and, you know, hold people up, etc., and waste money on lawyers and stuff like that, so they wouldn't have done that. Also, you know, Bret technically wasn't going to go right after the Survivor Series. He was up to be with the WWF until, you know, the end of 97. He's just supposed to work the December In Your House pay-per-view. And then, you know, they just pulled the screw job, and, you know, it's just the most talked about thing. I mean, whatever you see on the Shawn Michaels DVDs, not true, especially Gerald Briscoe's part. not really the greatest thing out there. But still, I mean, it's just one of the most talked about moments. I mean, I may one day just give my whole thoughts on the incident, but I don't feel like doing it right now. And I mean, and eventually that whole match changed the whole Monday Night Wars thing, where you had WCW, you know, who was absolutely dominating the WWF. Well, once Bret Hart gets there, they don't know what to do with him. They absolutely fail. And you had the WWF. After Bret leaves, they skyrocket and take the WCW's position as the best promotion in North America, at least, and, you know, maybe the best wrestling promotion in the world, where you have, you know, the emergence of Steve Austin. You had DX going strong there. And, you know, you had The Rock about to be, you know, one of the greatest guys they had going. And you also had Foley, etc. there. But I personally, if you didn't have the screw job, I think the WWF in it, because WCW was run by a bunch of monkeys. Austin was eventually going to take over. And yet, plus you also had, you know, Kane and Undertaker's little feud going there. So I think they were going to take it up anyway without the screw job. But screw job happened, and it just, I guess, sped the process up of WCW failing. Then you move over to 1999 Survivor Series, and to me, this one is remembered for, you know, the dream triple threat we were supposed to between Triple H, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship. Well, we didn't have that, as, you know, Austin wanted to take some time off to rehab his neck, and they did the angle where Austin got run over by the car, and Austin's replacement was The Big Show, who eventually went on to win the WWF Championship there in an okay Survivor Series. I mean, we also had the debut of Kurt Angle on this show. Really, no, not Survivor Series, but still, I mean, a guy gets his name out there, and, you know, he's eventually going to be big things. The 2000 Survivor Series is the continuation of basically this angle, where it's Triple H admitting that he was behind it, and we have a no finish in the match between him and Austin, and then we have the dumbest thing ever, where you had Austin just drop Triple H from this crane in a car, and it was just, ugh. And then, you know, 3 weeks later, Triple H comes back unscathed. Just awful. The 2001 Survivor Series, to me, is basically, what you're going to have here is just, you know, the end of an angle that should have given the WWF tons of money, but it was just completely botched from, you know, the moment it happened. Basically, it was the finale of the WWF versus the invaders of WCW and ECW. Angle that should have just gone to the bank, but they didn't, because, you know, you always had WCW dominant and ECW dominate. They'd have matches every week on Raws and SmackDowns. You should have saved them for the beginning. I mean, the only pay-per-view that did well for them in this angle was the Invasion angle, or the Invasion pay-per-view, I should say. Really, just an awfully done angle. I mean, I think most people realize this is on WWF television. Clearly, the WWF's going to win. They weren't behind it at all. It's just, you know, the end, it was just an awful angle. I mean, if you want to know how bad it was, the final match was between the WWF guys. If you look at the Invasion team of WCW and ECW, it was Booker T and Rob Van Dam were the only guys who were truly from those two promotions. The other guys were Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, and Shane McMahon. That's who it was. It was really bad. And then, thank God that thing ended as a flop, and there's been many videos made or discussions on how bad this angle is, and I'll probably go one day on it in depth. And then in 2002 we have, you know, one of the best Survivor Series cards all around. You know, every match is good. Every match had a title change that had a title on the line. But also we remember the Elimination Chamber coming down here, as this was the debut of it, and to me it's, you know, one of the innovations that the company's had since, you know, a very long time, since Hell in a Cell. It's probably that. A really, you know, fun match. It was a great way to put a lot of the top guys in there and, you know, to have a good match. It was also here in this one where Shawn Michaels completed his storybook victory, where ever since he made his comeback at SummerSlam 02, he gets the belt, and before he drops it the next month to Triple H, but still. And other than that, we move over to Survivor Series 05, where our final memory here, as we had Steve Austin's team lose to Eric Bischoff's team, and the stipulation was if Austin lost, he'd have to retire. And Randy Orton is here, and he gets proven to be, you know, a superstar in the making. Even more so after, you know, his feuds with Foley. I believe it was, maybe it was 04, I think. Yeah, I think it was 04 then. But still, you know, and then Austin cuts a nice little heartfelt promo from, you know, since it was in really good show. And then this brings us to tonight, the 2008 Survivor Series. What does it have in store? Well, it's the return of John Cena to the WWE in his hometown, but to me, he's going to probably get booed because of actually what Cena has done during the World Series, where he was supporting the Tampa team instead of his own Boston team. But anyways, let's do predictions now as I kind of ramble a long time on my memories. The first match is a, SmackDown Diva versus Raw Diva match. It's basically the SmackDown versus Raw Divas. It's Beth Phoenix, Mickie James, Jillian Hall, Candice, Michelle, and Kelly versus Michelle, McCool, Maria, Natalya, and Maryse. Basically, if you're not in this match and you're a Diva, you know where your place is. Other than Layla, who's actually got a spot in the company, you know where your place is. You're probably going to get cut or something along the lines, maybe. Other than, and Eve too, she's got a great pair and she's going to hold the microphone. But really, to me, this match could be fun if they do it in a certain way. If they don't forget about the feuds going in, if you don't forget about, Michelle McCool and Maria having some dissension and costing probably Maria to get eliminated. Also, what I think will be really interesting is that if the whole team of Raw gets wiped out, except for Beth and Mickie James, and they have to work together and fight through the odds and to get rid of the SmackDown team. That would be really interesting, as they kind of been building that in the 1 week there on Raw. But still, I think that'd be a really interesting way. And then that's my prediction. The Raw team will probably get the win. Then we move over to the next match, which is it's an elimination match. It's Batista as captain, CM Punk, Kofi Kingston, Matt Hardy, and R-Truth versus Randy Orton as the team captain, Cody Rhodes, Shelton Benjamin, William Regal, and Mark Henry. Really, this one, honestly, of all the elimination matches, it's probably going to be the best. It's got a lot of stuff in it. I got a lot of great guys, I should say. You got some good feuds going on here. Hopefully, Punk or Kofi don't get out too much in this one. To me, I think what's going to be interesting is how they book it between, Rhodes and Orton, considering what's happening there. But still, I think you have Batista's team get the win. Batista wins. You have Orton probably walk out on Rhodes and just get counted out. And you have Batista get set up to be in a triple threat next month at Armageddon with Jericho and Cena. That's how I see that one going. Then the next match, which, it'll be an okay elimination match. You got Shawn Michaels' team of Rey Mysterio, Great Khali, and Cryme Tyme versus JBL's team of MVP, Kane, and The Miz and Morrison. To me, what would be awesome is if you have JBL's team win and you have Miz and Morrison be the sole survivors to even more push this tag team, which really deserves it. This one still has, feuds going on in it, but, some of them I didn't even know were. Apparently, Kane and Mysterio are still happening. MVP and Great Khali should not happen at all, and I just feel so bad for MVP having to job at the Great Khali. But still, I think if you have Miz and Morrison be the sole survivors, they take out Michaels again, and Mysterio be great there. And still get to push this team, and, come on, if it's pinning Shawn, Shawn cannot get hurt by a pinfall. Shawn's a guy who's never losing. He could lose a million matches in a row. One of the most over guys in the company. Then we move over to the next match, which is a casket match between The Undertaker and The Big Show. To me, I don't know if these guys can pull 3 good matches in a row out, as, their last match was fantastic, and their match before that was really good too. To me, obviously, I think this is the feud ender. You have Taker go over here. He pulls out, maybe a victory how he beat Yokozuna. 94 Survivor Series, a big boot show falls in the casket. Although there will be no breaking of a Japanese flag, though. But still, I see Taker going over here as, he's Taker and he needs to get this feud over. Or you could, after you have a Big Show be put in the casket, have Edge return and continue that feud, as I guess it never really, Edge can get his revenge for you burning me or whatever. That would be pretty interesting if that happens, but I don't think it will. Then we the next match, which is now the triple threat match for the WWE Championship, is Triple H, The Friends against Vladimir Kozlov and Jeff Hardy. Really, this one's now interesting since on WWE.com they put an angle out there where Jeff Hardy had passed out in a stairwell. Don't know how that'll play into it, but now it is an angle. If WWE.com is reporting it most of the time, it's an angle. Really expect this, to be an interesting match, and you have, I don't see Jeff still getting the belt, and Kozlov, he needs a lot of time. I don't see him getting the belt. Triple H will pin Hardy, and then after the match you have Kozlov get mad that Jeff ruined his title shot and, beat down Hardy, and then probably maybe give him a month off or so. I don't know what you're going to do with Jeff Hardy then, because I know for sure at Armageddon we get Triple H versus Kozlov one-on-one, and I don't know how that's going to be, but it's a good thing that they put Jeff Hardy in this match because the fans just don't care about Kozlov, and Kozlov still needs a lot of work in the ring. So if you've seen his match with Taker, it was not that good at all. And then we move over to the main event here, which is the World Heavyweight Championship. Chris Jericho versus John Cena. Really, this match is going to be a pretty good match. I mean, these two always put on good matches, but, I mean, Cena's probably going to get hated on for what he did, as I said, in the did in the World Series. And, you know, I think if you have Jericho, he's probably going to win because, you know, the company needs Jericho to win. They need that guy who's just such an asshole to be champion there. I mean, Cena coming in and winning wouldn't do anything great. And, I mean, it is in his hometown, and WWE doesn't like to put the title on hometown guys at all, really. I mean, they only do it, like, I did it once, and I don't remember when. I think they've done it a couple times, but still, I mean, that the only real time I can come to mind is when Bulldog won the Intercontinental belt at SummerSlam 92. But still, I mean, this is probably going to set up, you know, the triple threat, and then eventually that's when you get Jericho drop the strap to Cena, and Cena and Batista can build towards WrestleMania 25. But anyways, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.